This aspect of the talk is what I've called Suburban Legends. I initially referred to it as urban legends, and my children said, "Dad, we're in the suburbs," so we've recoined that phrase for this purpose. And these contacts all took place before 2010. So I haven't kept any notes on it, and I'm speaking purely from memory. But there were 3 people who contacted Marnie Keenan or my family, said they had talked to police officers who told them the case had been solved and that the suspect was the son of either a prominent GM executive or a prominent automobile executive. All 3 of these, 2 of these 3 came about before there was any publicity on the case. And I'd like to review these 3 instances with you. The first was a classmate at Marquette University of my children, who also grew up in this area. And she told Chris and Kathy that she was in a bar in Chicago at one time talking to a Detroit police officer and asked about the status of this case. And he seemed quite shocked that we didn't know anything about it, but told her that they'd solved the case and that the culprit was the son of a prominent GM executive. She even told my children that she had kept that officer's card for a long period of time, but she had recently moved and threw it out along with some other records that she had. So that's the first report we had from somebody. The second report came in November, right after Marnie Keenan's article was published on October 26, 2009 in the Detroit News. And a young man knocked on the door, at least young by my standards. Said he'd played hockey with Tim, which means he was plus or minus 50 at the time, and asked if he could talk to me, and I invited him in. His name was Tim Nummer. Said he had played hockey with my son Tim, had been to my house. He didn't attend the same school Tim did, my Tim, but he was familiar with Tim. He said, about 18 years ago, I was working in a clothing store, and I had a number of police officers as customers. And he said, I asked one of them one night if he'd worked on any interesting cases. And he said, yes, I worked on the Oakland County child killer case. And Tim Number said, well, I played hockey with Tim King. What's the status of the case? He said the officer didn't reply immediately, but when he left the store, he almost got to the front door and turned around and came back and said the case is solved. He was killed by the son of a prominent GM executive. He's been hospitalized. He was turned in by his attorney, and the case is closed. And Tim Number said if they were telling him that, he just assumed that we knew about it. He was quite surprised that nobody had told us that. And the third call was made to Marnie Keenan shortly after she wrote her article. And Marnie told me that a lady called her and said that she had been a teacher of Christine Mihalik, and she had a similar experience in the Salamander Bar, I think it was, the one in the old Pontchartrain Hotel downtown. Said she was talking to a police officer and made some inquiry about the case, and he similarly told her that the case was solved and the children were killed by the son of a prominent automobile executive. Of course, I can't follow up on those reports, and I have seen nothing to indicate that any of the investigating authorities have followed up on those reports. And I have no reason to believe those reports are false. And that weighs heavily on my thoughts about the Bush involvement, and I pass that along for whatever final decisions the people watching this program may reach.